Hi, I'm Ruth Shapira, and I'm glad you're here. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Welcome to this podcast by Inner Judaism, a spiritual look at our lives. We're into just the second portion of the Torah with Parshat Noach. For those of us remembering our days in Hebrew school, this is the story of Noah, of the flood, events that led up to it, and Noah's instructions from God to build an ark for his family and many animals. Of course, there's more in this portion, but we're just going to focus on Noah. We're going to take a different approach with Noah. The Torah describes him as being righteous and also wholehearted, yet many of our sages say that compared to someone like Abraham, for example, Noah falls short. But does he? In this episode, I'll pretend to be Noah's lawyer for the defense, since I think Noach in Hebrew, I'm going to go back and forth, gets a tough go of it from our sages. After all, what made him from all the people of the day a likely subject for saving? Why him? Please join me as we explore Noah a little bit more. In sports, there's the concept of an asterisk, which is putting a note next to someone's name if they, for example, were on steroids when they earned the title of most runs batted in. It's considered somehow less than. Well, I feel that Noah has an asterisk after his name. The Torah, Genesis 6:9, tells us that Noah is an Ish Tzaddik Tamim. Actually, the phrase is Ish Tzaddik Tamim Haya B'dorotav, which is translated to a righteous and simple man of his generation. However, it's often shortened to Ish Tzaddik B'dorotav, a righteous man in his generation. Rashi and other sages focus really just on the last part of that sentence, B'dorotav, meaning in his generation. And then they argue, well, maybe in another generation he wouldn't be considered righteous, but we're not going to go there either. Our focus is going to be on the word tamim, which comes after tzaddik. So, ish tzaddik tamim. Often in the translations, it will say that tamim means simple or blameless. You may have heard a version of this word before. Think back to the Passover Seder, if you've been to one, where we describe the traits of 4 children. The third one is usually described as tam, which is translated as simple. There, it almost has a pejorative meaning. The simple child is portrayed as clueless, maybe a little bit immature, and without much, if any, intellectual capacity. But that definition of tam or tamim doesn't work, and here's why. In Vayikra, Leviticus, the many offerings that people brought to the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary, are described in detail. There are different kinds of offerings, but those that are tamim, that are called tamim, are not there defined as blameless, but instead represents a wholehearted offering. So tamim makes sense to be understood as wholeheartedness. Let's explore what this has to do with Noah. So let's start at the beginning. To know a person is to know their family, and so we need to go back a bit to Genesis, Bereshit, where we learn about Noah's father. His name was Lamech, and he saw the birth of his son as a way to ease his own burden. Really? Yeah, according to our sages, Rashi and Sepharno, Noah's father called his son Noach because it would, quote, ease us from the toil of our hands. And according to Sforno, Lamech, his father, prayed that his son Noah would provide him with the ability to take a rest from his heavy labor. Can you imagine what it must be like growing up with a father like that? That the purpose of your birth was for his own purposes? In Genesis chapter 5, verses 28 to 29, the text says when he named him that his father said, Ze Yenachamenu, which means, may this one provide a rest from our toil. May this one. Noah is referred to as a this, not a son, not as my son, but a this. And the text says, may this one provide a rest from our toil, from the pains of our hands coming from the ground, which Hashem has cursed. Noah was conceived to meet a need, to be the tiller of soil, the one who would be able to coax the land to provide food, and hopefully to get rid of the curse that was given to Adam, that only with painstaking effort would the land give fruit. Well, okay, maybe it was common to have children to help out, but the Torah doesn't describe any other birth situations in that way. So for that reason, it's really a significant thing. So what else do we learn about Noah? Well, in the last verse of Bereshit, Genesis, we find out more. We find out, this is the phrase, Noach matzah chen be'enai ad Hashem. Chen is actually the reverse of Noah's name in Hebrew, but it means grace and kindness. Noah found favor in Hashem's eyes. The only other place in the whole Torah that these words are found are about the way God regards Moses. So we already are seeing something special about Noah. The word tamim is also used again in the Torah when Hashem speaks to Avram, telling him to walk in his presence and to be tamim. So from the use of that word, we do understand it to mean wholehearted. And perhaps because that word is used with Avram, that's why maybe Noah is continually compared to Abraham, who argues with God about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, advocating for the saving of even just a few righteous people who may be living there amidst wickedness, while instead Noah seems to accept God's command for the obliteration of all that exists on earth. But yet the text tells us, after the instructions God gives Noah about the ark, and Noah did everything just as Hashem commanded him. No arguments, no questions. Didn't ask a thing. Building this huge ark that was taking years to build. No questions though. And with a full heart, Noah was tamim. He was all in. It seems no matter what was asked of him, he was in. And he would be at work building that ark, it says, our sages says, for over 100 years. And maybe it was the best way for Noah to arouse curiosity, to prompt a response, to give people an opportunity to think through their actions, maybe to see whether or not there was a speck of goodness there with some regret that they may have for their actions. While on the other hand, Abraham did not have to overcome that. He did not have to, it doesn't say that he had to live among the wicked in order to advocate for them. They were afar. They were in Sodom and Gomorrah. They weren't in his area. But Noah was unavoidably part of that evil culture. And perhaps all he could do was focus on his family, fulfilling the command of Hashem, and be willing to answer all questions that anyone would ask. Imagine the taunts and perhaps ridicule he got in building something the size of a cruise ship in anticipation of something. We don't know too much about Noah's wife, and the sages say that her name is Naamah. But can you imagine the questions she must have asked him? Noah, really? An ark? It's going to take years to build? What are you thinking? And why exactly? So we have to take a step back and be a little bit more generous with Noah. Instead of comparing him to Abraham, maybe we would derive a lot more benefit from looking in not a linear way, like this is from Noah, this is what Noah was and did, and this is what Abraham did, and there's a line going from Noah to Abraham. But instead, if we looked at it as a constellation, meaning it's not one or the other, it's everything. There are times when we need to argue, like Abraham, when we need to seek justice and cry out to God, demanding a reset. And there were times that Moshe argued with God as well on our behalf of the Jewish people. But there are also times when we need just to obey, to do what's being asked of us, and to do it with a full heart, to be tamim. Noah did just as God commanded him to the letter. Every cubit of gopher wood, every floor in the ark, the opening above, the door, every single animal species, every pair, Noah did just as God asked. Both the model of Noah and the model of Abraham are helpful to us, not as one or the other, but as different parts of our own journey. By the end of this parsha, we see that Noah's skills as a tiller of soil paid off, because when the ark finally settled down after the flood, he was able to grow a beautiful vineyard. And so maybe the stress of all of it got to him, and you could read what happens next in the parsha, but really, I'm just now a lawyer for his defense right now. What I choose to take away is Noah's wholehearted approach to doggedly follow God's command in the midst of evil, in the midst of what must have been humiliation and even ridicule, despite all the odds, to do what God asked of him. And interesting, in Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 13, we are told how to behave, and it is to be tamim. The words are tamim tihya im Adoshem Elokecha. We are to be wholehearted with Hashem. Our legacy that Noah gives us is to strive to be tamim. May we all achieve that sense of wholeness, tamimut, which is integrity between our inner self and our outer beings, a sense of completeness, of wholeness in our relationships with our friends and family, in our actions, and in our dedication to carry out Hashem's will. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you will subscribe or follow. And if you like this podcast, if you like me delving into the Parsha, I would love if you would let me know. Wishing you a glorious day and the ability to make this day better than yesterday.